everyone. Welcome to the Enterprise Mobility Insight Outlook podcast. I'm Gina Daniel Lee, Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships at Stratix. Today, we're talking about digital transformation in hospitality, an industry which has been a really hot topic since the pandemic. I'm really excited about our conversation today because I don't think we could have a better expert to talk through this topic than today's guest, Mike Blake. Mike is SVP and Chief Technology Officer at American Hotel and Lodging Association. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the podcast.
Gina, thanks for having me. I absolutely feel that it's a great opportunity to go ahead and tell everyone about hospitality. I was a former CIO of a big hospitality chain, and now I work for the trade association that services the industry. So absolutely, I could give you some insight on what's going on and what have you. So happy to be here.
That's great. A lot of expertise for sure. And I'm excited to have our listeners learn more. So, Mike, many industries like retail and restaurants are well into the adoption of mobile solutions. And we know that mobile drives higher productivity and better customer experiences in their operations. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems that the hospitality industry, for the most part, is at the very early stages of its digital transformation. I mean, some workflows like bookings are highly digitized, but others, operations like, housekeeping, front desk, event management, concierge maintenance, and others don't seem to be quite there yet. Am I off base with that? And if not, why is that?
Yeah, I think, Gina, there are some brands and there are some chains, and there's even some individual hotels that are much further along the journey than others. But when you look at the entire industry in its whole, a lot of this stems around the actual franchise ownership model and things along the lines of, there's a lot of dynamics within the context of that when there's two really, one on the franchise side, or it's not even a franchise issue, it's more of an ownership issue. It's similar to if you and I were selling our house, right? Do you really invest in a new roof? Well, should the hotel be investing in a new digital platform if they're going to be selling in a year or two, or some short-term time horizon? So you have that dynamic, and then you also have the franchise dynamic where not all owners may or may not choose a path which could lead to digital transformation. There is a lot of flexibility sometimes on that, and based upon what a brand agreement has or what have you. I used to tell everyone I was the CIO of good suggestions because that's kind of what happens a lot, and as technology plays out, and sometimes that slows adoption. I would also say sometimes the cost is somewhat higher than most, right? I mean, you don't know what you don't know as you start down this digital journey. I mean, if you want to be fully digitized, think of things like mobile locks, which I think are pretty cool, right? You can just show up and go right into your room and what have you. Well, those lock sets aren't cheap. They're cheap on like one room, but when you have 1,100 rooms, they start adding up. So things, and that's one of the things as we look at kind of the infrastructure around and some of the incentives that are out there. Look, a lot of times this is a race on who's in front, and let me take a look at my neighbor and see what they're doing. Well, when nobody wants to be on the frontiers with no peers. So there you go.
No, that makes perfect sense. And, hospitality isn't the only industry struggling with how to get franchisees on board with new technology, right? I mean, we see it in restaurants too. And one of the ways that we found to solve for this has been with easy to use portals. I mean, we make it as simple as possible because our experience has been that, no friction increases the buy-in, right? Give me some examples of what kinds of digital solutions the industry could be leveraging, and what's the advantage for hospitality to go ahead and make some investments now?
Yeah, so if I was to take a look in, what are some of our major problems that we have? How can digital help with some of those problems? And probably the biggest problem in hospitality right now is employee shortages. So we're looking at things not to replace people, right, but to augment them, to help them do a better job, to be able to maybe drive a little more self-service in areas where we can't staff. And a lot of this will just drop to the bottom line. So things that a kiosk, for example, I mean, we're all kind of used to an ATM. We're getting more used to the airline kiosks. Well, I got to tell you, the hotel kiosks is kind of iffy on some of their use. I think there's some great solutions out there, and they're getting even better. And I imagine a world where kiosks are going to be great for line busting or actually be in better use. Something as simple as placement of kiosks. We found, you don't really put a kiosk right next to a person, because if you're the only person there, it's kind of awkward, right? You're trying to figure out, do I go to the person? Do I use the kiosk? Not a good idea, right? So even placing the kiosk is right. I think, we talked a little bit about the mobile key solution. I think as, new hotels come online and more refurbishments happen, I think the new lock sets are gonna come in. And I think the data from those lock sets are gonna be critical too, as we move further down the road. I think mobile devices are absolutely going to be better utilized. And, at one point in time, we thought the QR code was dead, right? And then the pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden everybody's doing QR codes and they're back again. So we're kind of getting more used to that. So mobile devices and QR codes, and I've seen some brands actually use a QR code so I can use my own phone as a remote. That's kind of, is it way out there on the digital spectrum? No, but kind of neat in the way that I can start utilizing my own devices instead of that which is in the room. And little things like that, I think, enhance the guest experience, because the guest experience really, it's different strokes for different folks, right? And different people have, you and I probably could travel differently, right? You're more friendly than I am. So I would find that, I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to get into my room and, no interaction. So the digital journey, the path, the touchless type experience, pretty good for a person like me. But look, at the end of the day, I think everybody has there's different solutions that are coming in. And what's happening is, when I think about, where we were and where we're coming, it's just it's a great area for opportunity.
No, I completely agree with you. And, you mentioned the QR code. I love the new uses of the QR code, even being a outgoing or friendly person, as you said. I still like the convenience of that. And I love the convenience of the mobile key. And I do think that this is one area that is interesting, that this type of technology is being used in other industries, right? Like government, restaurant, and retail. So that is one area where hospitality is actually kind of leading the way, which is an interesting data point. And we know that there's tons of benefits, right, of digital transformation in other industries. But, what are specific to hospitality? What are the benefits there, and why now?
Yeah, well, I do think, if I was to kind of look and see where we're at and what we're doing, everyone's coming out of the pandemic, right? And we had a real tough go with the pandemic, and a lot of our staff was cut pretty significantly. I mean, there are anywhere between 50 to 80%, depending on the brand and what have you, actually cut their IT staff. So, with that, and folks feeling kind of overwhelmed and what have you, I mean, these initiatives were kind of moving along. Now they're accelerating. Mm-hmm. And this is the right time to be looking at solutions. And I think we're trying to get away from this kind of, we need to buy, we need to build stuff, because the accelerated way is to buy it and integrate it. Because I really do think that solutions now are getting more and more easier to transfer data. I mean, with APIs becoming a little the modern stack as people are trying to integrate solutions, it's becoming easier and easier to share data. So now is a great time, Gina. I mean, if I was to say, let's look out and start building stuff, I'd say don't do that, because there's plenty of people out there who have built great solutions and are doing some great things. So look at them.
Yeah, I agree. And digital transformation doesn't have to be an all or nothing scenario, right? You don't have to do it all at once. What are some of those, leading edge use cases that you can think of that the hospitality organizations are implementing first, and why is that?
Sure. I think what's interesting, Gina, is what happened during the pandemic is, you know, so I already mentioned the layoffs within kind of IT departments within hospitality, but the solution providers, what they did was they actually innovated. They actually spent more time. What some of the larger ones said is they shifted from having sales resources to engineering resources. So they actually built better solutions. So as they came out of the pandemic, you had the one group who has no one, and then you have the other group building better stuff. So it's kind of like when you compare the two, it's like it kind of tells you, that buy versus build is kind of an old and dusted type of discussion anymore. We shouldn't even be we are in the business of putting heads in beds and doing hospitality. We shouldn't be in software development. We should let experts such as yourself build better solutions.
Yeah, the build versus buy decision is one that takes place all the time in all industries, right? In hospitality in particular, like what's the low-hanging fruit? Where you can get your biggest bang for your buck?
Yeah, I think it's in the world of self-service. So when you start looking at things like this touchless experience and what have you, I'm hoping that we are beyond that buy versus build thing. And as we're buying, we can accelerate and actually jump on your innovation curve or somebody else's innovation curve, because I think those are additive. I think you can get into a world where you can get to be a more innovative organization by putting these solutions together.
Yeah, I agree. We just recently conducted some research. You may have seen our 2023 Enterprise Mobility Report, but in it, it showed that 97% of IT leaders across all industries are feeling at least somewhat overwhelmed by the influx of mobile into their business. And in the case of your industry, Mike, are there other factors at play that provide challenges to widespread implementation of mobile?
Yeah, I think right now it's this pandemic era kind of influx, of the flex of the staff, right? Because what's happened is the people that were cut went off to other industries. And so now it's kind of like you're trying to deal with a team that, we want to do new stuff, we want to innovate, but we can't even get to the point where we're clearing our current table to look and see what's the next meal, right? So it's kind of like it would be great to be able to do everything at once, but I think a lot of teams are struggling right now. And hopefully this all gets digested and worked through in the next year. So I think 2023 is still going to be that year of transition and change. But I do think, once we come out of that, we'll be better, and we have learned some of our lessons, and I think we can fast iterate.
So when we think about, hardware and applications, which do you think is the hardest to implement?
Ooh, I think so that's always a tough question because I get both of them, right?
Right.
Because hardware is always tough because you're dealing with a very diverse workforce, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to think about from a housekeeper where English isn't their first language, all the way through to, the GM who may not be as tech savvy or wants to even deal with tech. So you're dealing with a broad spectrum of hardware type solutions and forms, and you want to make sure you get there. And then the software, on any given hotel, you might have 49 different solutions or pieces of technology that need to be cobbled together. So when you're working with that many, it's always hard to introduce something else into that system, right? You just never know when something, I always tell people it's easy to do it once, but you just got to do it like every Tuesday when Microsoft initiates a new patch.
Right.
Is it still going to work? Right.
Right.
That's where the magic in IT happens. It's that not the first time, it's just continuously that you have to make it work. So that's kind of the hard part. I always tell people in IT, it's never the first, it's always the 30th.
Right. What happens next? And on the hardware side too, I think also what comes into play is, are we looking at a 1-to-1, right, ratio in terms of employees to devices, or are we looking at shared devices? I think that adds another interesting element to that. Okay, this next question is going to be a two-part one.
Okay.
First, do you feel like this is going to be a tsunami of change that takes place, that takes the industry by storm, or is it going to be a slow roll? And then secondly, what are the consequences for hospitality companies that don't follow the same speed of adoption and are left behind?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think the tsunami of change might have, I think we're kind of through that. And I think we're getting into it's not so much a slow roll, but a little bit faster than that. So
somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. Yeah. But I do think that, it's not going to be about consequences as much as benefits. So I think there's going to be benefits to the guest experience that I think people are going to start adopting. And I think, a lot of the legacy and outdated technology is going to be that quote, rip and replace, because I just think the solutions are going to be compartmentalized to the point where you can inoculate them and start moving one solution to the next.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so, as we start to round out our discussion today, Mike, I want you to look into your crystal ball for me, okay? And tell me what you think are some new emerging technologies that you're excited about in the context of hospitality with new use cases.
Yeah, so I think one of them, which I think all of us can be excited about, and we heard a lot about this, and it's kind of hokey, is robots, right? But I don't think they're hokey anymore. I actually think there's a space there where we can absolutely get excited about augmentation. I mean, we've been, there's a Courtyard in the West Coast that is struggling to staff their Starbucks. So what they've done is they put a robot barista there from the hours of like 10 o'clock to noon. And it's kind of cool to see it serve up, coffee and mix. So that's kind of neat. So I think robots are going to, and there's also companies out there that are building robots that, as that you set in a room and they start vacuuming as housekeeping is doing other stuff. So it's not going to replace the housekeeper in any stretch of the imagination, but is it going to make their life a little easier and take out a task? Yeah, probably. Everyone can be excited about wearables because I do think that, it helps with this, we're talking about a staff alert solution. There are many cities and counties that are mandating staff alert. And what this is think of it as a panic button that you can press, if you're in trouble or something's gone wrong. I actually think that panic button solution is a fantastic solution for many applications. But the fact that those are coming standard within the hotel industry is fantastic, because I do imagine a world where, think of teachers or middle middle school teachers, having the ability to press a button and have emergency help or summon help immediately, right? I think it's just a great solution. And then, of course, we've heard, chatbots and AI all have ways of kind of moving that distribution of labor. So there's going to be labor saving devices there. And then finally, it's gotten a kind of a bad rap lately in Madison Square Garden, but I think facial recognition might have a play. So I do think that, it'll be easier for us to identify people and not have such a burden in that space. So yeah, I do think that it's an exciting time to be in hospitality.
Yeah, those are great examples. So I have one question. Did the robot get your coffee right?
It always does.
Love it. So, Mike, I know that you have not been on our podcast before, but if you've listened, we like to end with a few rapid fire questions for a little fun if you're game.
Always game.
All right. So the first one is hospitality related. Free plane ticket for the rest of your life or free accommodations for the rest of your life?
Oh, that's easy. That's free accommodations.
In any particular brand? No, don't answer that question.
Yes, no, we love them all equally.
That's right. What was your last Netflix or other streaming service binge?
Oh, I think I'm currently in it. It's the Last of Us at HBO Max. So another kind of end of time story and survivalist. How cool is that?
That's a good one. I like that one too. And then finally, if you had 3 items, only 3 that you could bring with you on a desert island, what would it be? What would they be?
Wow. 3 items. Wife, dog, and Leatherman. How's that?
Love it. Love it. And you'll get good brownie points at home for that answer.
There you go.
Mike, it was great to have you on the podcast today. Really great insights, and I appreciate you joining me. I do hope you'll come back.
Absolutely, Gina. If you'll have me, I'll be back. Thank you so much.
That sounds great. And listeners, as always, if you liked what you heard and would like more information or would like to sign up for future episodes, please visit us at stratixcorp.com/podcast to subscribe. We'd also love it if you would rate and leave a review for any podcast that you've listened to or to suggest any future topics you would like us to explore. Until next time, goodbye.